Hey, what's up, guys? I'm sure everybody's sitting around looking for something to do, reading something silly to get scared. Never a good thing. Instead, I figured I'd see if I catch you guys on here and tell you a story. It's an old story. It's a story about humility and no moccasins. A long, long time ago, there was this gal, old woman by the name of Old Moccasins. And she was known for her quill work. She could do some amazing quill work and beading skills. Women would travel all over to this village just to learn from her. But she was mostly known as Three Horn's wife. Three Horns, he was a magnificent leader. He they say that his staff, that holds the eagle feathers and his honors, was twice as long as a man is tall. You know, he had he had been on the war path for a lot in his life, gained many, many honors. Everyone knew who he was. This dude was a warrior. Uh, he was a tough cookie. And when he retired from being a warrior, he took his place on the council of elders, and always gave his advice. And people always adored that advice, because of the hardships that he had endured and overcome. So he was a pretty awesome man. So when this old man, 70 winters, but yet his physical sight could take your breath away. He was that strong. You know, People were pretty thrown off when he had taken to his deathbed and had gotten ill. People started to gather and talk, because Three Horns, was dying. This was a huge hit to the community. This was an elder that everybody had looked up to for advice. So all these people had gathered, and the village almost doubled in size in a matter of days. And once Three Horns had caught wind of this about all the people who had gathered, he said, I want the oldest people in the village to come to the lodge tonight. I have a story to tell. And so 4 old men and 2 old women joined the lodge, and there were Three Horns and No Moccasins, his wife. No Moccasins had been keeping busy this entire time, making sure all these new guests in the village were getting fed, because they were there to honor her husband, so it was her responsibility to make sure everybody felt like welcome guests and that everybody felt comfortable and had everything they needed. So she had been keeping busy. And the old man, he said, you see these things around my lodge, because with Indians, one side of the lodge of the teepee would be the man's side and the other the woman's side. And on the man's side, you saw this staff with eagle feathers that was twice as long as a man is tall. And you saw his war shield, and his bow and his lance, and all these acts of courage and bravery. And, he said that, I give these things to my wife, because her virtues go beyond mine. And everything that I've done in life wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this woman that you see sitting here beside me. And he said that it was wrong that he had gone this long without telling the story, but he wanted everyone in that village to know why he called his wife No Moccasins. You see, long before, this man had gone to another village. It's a bit of a party, after a big victory had been won. So there's all this food, music, dance, girls, and old Three Horns wakes up on a trail to the most big, beautiful eyes he'd ever seen in his life. And he looks at these eyes and says, "Oh my Lord, this beautiful woman. And he follows her down to the river to help carry the bladder bags, the water pouches, back to the village. And he was super surprised when this woman that had a lot of quarters, she asked him if he wanted to come and see her again that evening, and then the next evening. So lo and behold, old homie Three Horns spent most of that autumn there among that village. And to his surprise, she thought that he'd make a good husband. So he went back home to his own village to tell his parents, to get ready for the bride price, have his dad help him with some ponies to offer the girl's father. But some stuff had gone down, and what had gone down was a war party that had come against them. And what this did was it ended up with a man dying and 2 young women being held hostage. So Three Horns, along with other warriors, went to go find these people in that village to go save their 2 women, right? And the plan was that one of them would be lighting a fire on this side while a couple of them snuck in and got the girls. Everything worked out just fine, except for 3 Moons had been captured. He thought to himself that that was a good price to pay to get those women back, But he had been made into a slave by these people who hated him. They stripped down his clothes so he was to walk naked and be made fun of and ashamed. People would throw dirt on his face. At night, they would tie his hands and his feet to 2 poles, so that he couldn't move, all stretched out. And it went on and on like this. He didn't get food. He had to fight the dogs for food scraps. So this guy had gotten really, really, really weak, old Three Horns. And as he got more weak, he even prayed once, that Tunkasha would give him a quick death, because he was too weak to ever escape. And he started thinking about his wife-to-be, and he imagined her face. And he could even see those big brown eyes. And then he realized he wasn't dreaming. He was actually seeing her face. She had come there and snuck into the village in this land far, far away. And snuck into the village and cut his tethers loose. And they had escaped in a rainy night, so the rain washed out their tracks. It was the perfect night to set something like this up. And she took him to a place that she had prepared, for him to get rest and to hide. And so they stayed there for 2 days, and she got him a little bit better, but he was still pretty weak to move. And then they saw those 6 warriors on a war party coming. And Three Horns knew who it was. They were sent from that village. And that was 6 of the strongest warriors and the best trackers sent, because that was a dishonor, that a slave would escape, when they knew that he wouldn't be able to escape, right? You couldn't let him know that he had help. No Moccasins. Her name was Carries the Fire back then, and she sure carried the fire in his heart. But she left, and she walked down to the river and set a pair of her moccasins down. Came back to the husband barefoot. And it was to mislead the 6 warriors, where they thought that they had taken off in the river, so they started walking the river and led him astray. But it was this act of courage of his wife, that he started calling her No Moccasins. But he never told anyone in the tribe that was why he called her No Moccasins. He had known wisdom and courage and bravery, but his wife did something that was more courageous and more brave than any warrior he had ever known, going into enemy lines to save her husband. But it was the act of humility that she didn't want anyone to know that it was her that had saved her husband. She told everyone that her husband was just that strong, that he escaped, And that act of courageous story led to many other courageous deeds in his life. Every time he would go out on the warpath, or any time he'd do anything in life, he would just tell himself, let me be worthy enough man for my wife. No moccasins. No. So he tells these elders in his teepee his story. And he says that he wants all of them to go around the village and tell everyone the story of no moccasins. And he said that when I die, I want to be put up on the scaffold, the burial scaffolds, as I came into this world before I knew my wife, alone and with nothing. You know, I want nothing but my burial robe to be there. I don't want my staff there. I don't want my warrior shield. I don't want my bow. I don't want my lance. Just put me in that robe. You know, and the old man died a few days later. And the wife respected his wishes, you know, and he was only buried up there, you know, put on the burial scaffolding, you know, in his buffalo robe. Nothing to show that he was ever a warrior. That was his act of humility. You know, she gave all of those things to the Kit Fox Warrior Society, you know, and all those warriors, they honored it by putting those sacred things in the great council where all the people gathered in the center of the village. A few years later passed, you know, and she still lived her same kind of life. People from all over would line up food every day at her lodge door that she'd share with the young and old. They say that sometimes the people would leave stacks of firewood, and the firewood would be just as high as the teepee. But she'd share that too, you know, because she did these things not for anything, but just to be who she was, a humble, living being. At 70 winters too, No Moccasins passed away. And when they put her up on the burial scaffolding, they put 3 horns, staff, and his eagle feathers, and his bow, and his lance, and his arrows, and all those things. And at the bottom on the ground, there were hundreds of moccasins, because the people wanted to make sure that on her journey, she didn't have to walk barefoot. Man, as many times as I told that story, it still gets to me. You know, it's not about courage or wisdom. It's about humility and learning how to cry and being vulnerable with your tears. These stories, you know, they always have something to teach us, guys. They always have something to offer everyone. You know, so I hope that one day you'll tell the story about no moccasins. You know, that's why the story's called No Moccasins, not 3 horns. Stories are good. Love you, homies.